get into this, Stanley, can you just explain to us the overall principle guiding open government partnership?
The Open Government Partnership, as you mentioned, is a coalition of government and civil society organizations and private sector groups who come together to drive reform, drive transparency, drive improve service delivery in government. Is like I said, this partnership is like marriage. Two people
Okay.
agreeing to live together. So more like bring government and civil society to the table to try and find solutions to the challenges that bedevil governance in general. So the commitments, the action plans are usually designed in a collaborative manner. It's not a government recommendation alone or civil society recommendation alone.
Okay.
It is an agreed partnership. The problem is identified jointly, the solution is profiled jointly, implementation of that solution is also done jointly. So it's a partnership in the true sense of it, just aimed at driving improved service delivery.
All right, I see freedom of information. Now, let's look at the second National Action Plan. What commitments in the second NAP that addresses contract disclosure and the extractive sectors?
So in the 2019 to 2022 action plan,
Okay.
we have made two commitments related to the extractive sector transparency. One of them is public disclosure of extractive sector contracts, licenses, permits, payments to government, and revenue streams to improve transparency, fiscal terms, and positively impact public finances. The aim is just generally open up the space so that citizens are aware of what happens in that sector. There are questions around disclosure of contracts by NNPC, DPR, award of licenses and permits for both import and export of extractive related commodities. So broadly, so that I don't go into too much detail, broadly make sure that the sector is transparent. That's on one side. The other part of the commitment we have made related to extractive sector is around remediation issues from our EITI process, our NATI process. As you know, NATI publishes audits of the extractive sector frequently. And what we have found is that the recommendations and findings of the audit process are repetitive. They are recurring issues from year to year. So we want to find a way to solve those problems so that we're not just seeing audit recommendation that nobody responds to. We need to, the essence of the whole audit process is so that somebody can act to effect change. So we have made specific commitment to tackle those recurring remediation recommendations from NAITI audit reports.
Okay. So, what would you say, or how far would you say the OGP has gone to ensure contract disclosure and also contract transparency in this sector, in the extractive sector? How far would you say this guy?
This is a tricky question. It's a tricky question. If I one way or the other, if I answer, I will most likely offend someone. But let me try. I do say that we are far behind from where we want to be. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done. We are not anywhere near where our expectations are, both from within the government and from the civil society partners. We are not anywhere near where our expectations are. But I will also recognize the work that is ongoing. A lot of people are putting in sweat into making this process work. I recognize the fact that for the first time, the ET published, they set up a beneficial ownership register for the extractive sector. That register shows you who actually owns what company in the extractive sector. That was something that was based on speculation and rumors before. Now there is a factual government-backed database saying that when you see the name of a company, you can find the name of the person who is behind the company. If a license is given to a company, you can find the name of the individual behind that company. So that's the first huge step. There is an ongoing conversation within DPR about also setting up a portal where all of the contract disclosures will be made. We're not anywhere close to concluding that, but it's still a long way off.
So would you consider that a milestone yet? Or what would be a major milestone by the contract disclosure commitment?
I think what I would consider a major milestone is what Naiti did with the beneficial ownership, if I'm being fair, because I can say that completely ticked off the box. Others' efforts were made, but we're not anywhere near. But for the beneficial ownership register, we completely ticked off the box, and we met the requirement of the EITI process and the OGP process. So that I would say is a major milestone.
Okay, so what would you say are some of the efforts of the Open Government Partnership? What have they done to ensure contract transparency in the extractive sector?
So one of the key things we have done with OGP is that for the first time we brought, during this process, we brought civil society and government agencies, NNPC, DPR, Ministry of Petroleum Resources, Mining Cadastre, all of the people who work in the entire value chain. We brought them together to put this second action plan in place. That action plan was approved by the president. He has given his mandate to all government agencies to implement every specific activity listed in the action plan. That's a huge step, getting that sort of presidential mandate on such a thorny issue as contract disclosure. It's not the end of the road, but it's a step forward. And I always like to look at progress. Sometimes we are always focused on the things that have not been done, and we don't recognize the work that has been put in. So I always see the fact that we have government agencies and civil society partners agreeing that this is something that needs to be done is a huge step forward. That it has not been done is still a big challenge, but the fact that we agree that this needs to be done is a step forward. It might take a while, and I'm grateful to people like Faith and her team, for the effort and pressure the amount of government. That's the essence of the whole partnership, that they can continue to pressure government to act. That now there is a commitment, you can say to the president, you signed off on this. You need to push your team to work hard. That's a huge step forward.
Okay. Our second action plan, it's in progress and working, and you just like to look at the fact that things have started already. And it looks like there's something that could
try
come
to be an optimist.
All right. So would you say, is there any collaboration between the NNPC, NEITI, and EITI on contract transparency?
Okay, let me say thank you so much, Stanley, for that. We've always said that it's one thing to write out good laws and agreements, but implementation is another hurdle. Yes. And so that's why civil society, every time we say civil society needs to be on their toes, calling out that implementation should be done. So last year, the NNPC became a supporting company of the EITI. So they now signed on to the EITI standard, onto themselves that they're going to abide by the EITI standard. And NNPC is also a very visible player in the OGP process. So if you ask me, I would say yes, there's a collaboration in that sense between NNPC, EITI, and OGP. The second National Action Plan, NNPC made very copious commitments, especially on the area of contract transparency and disclosure. But unfortunately, on the 17th of March, following our contract transparency work, we sent an FOI to NNPC asking for one of the contracts that they agreed to, written, the direct sales, direct purchase contract of the NNPC. It's part of their commitment on the OGP. If you pick the OGP document, NNPC committed to ensure that there's disclosure of those documents. Unfortunately, yesterday we got a response from their lawyer, Afe Babalola and Co., that told us that they cannot disclose that contract.
Wow.
That they cannot, because it has trade secrets. They knew ab initio that the contract had trade secrets, but they went ahead to make a commitment that they were going to disclose the same contract. And just an FOI, we are not asking to give us contracts that are still in process. We ask for contracts that have been signed since 2000. And this National Action Plan of the OGP was signed in 2019. It's a National Action Plan for 2019 to 2022, and already NNPC is saying they can't give us that document. So that's a challenge to the implementation and to the fulfillment of that commitment that they have just made.
I'm happy that she can quote a commitment that NNPC made, which is one of the things I was trying to highlight. The fact that that there is something to hold NNPC to say, look, you already made this commitment. In the past, you cannot be saying NNPC promised to give you this and they are failing. Right now, you can call them out for failing to keep a promise they made. So which is why what I was referring to say, look, the fact that we can get them to agree to something and that we can hold them to it, I see that as progress.
Yes.
So today, Faith can confidently say, look, you've promised to do this, you have to do it.
Okay. So what are some of the ways that the OGP can, what are some of the things the OGP can do to support an already existing contract transparency platform?
And I'm happy that there's a written document given to Faith now, right? There are processes that keep communication channels open between civil society and the government agencies. There is a technical working group that is put in place to oversee the implementation of this action plan. At that technical committee level, we can tackle issues such as this one that has come up. So again, there is room for us to find a solution to the problem. And I'm happy that there's this disagreement, this open disagreement between Faith's team and NNPC. It makes me happy because it helps us put to test what we have committed to do. If there is no disagreement, we will never be sure if this commitment was genuine or not. So the fact that there's this full-blown disagreement between NNPC and the team is very useful. I'm hoping that when we do the next technical working group meetings for the extractive sector, that this issue will be center stage. But beyond the technical working group, there's a steering committee put in place by the president to oversee this process, the highest policy making body for this OGP process. So if we do not resolve the issues at that technical level, there are ministers, including the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, a member of that committee, and that issue can come up, and this committee reports directly to the president and brings memos to the FEC for deliberation. So there are opportunities for us to take this up. But one thing I'm sure is that by the end of this process, we will know if these commitments were made genuinely or not.
Exactly.
All right, now let's get back to Faith Nwadi. She's Center for Transparency Advocacy. So how does Mr. Stanley's explanation fit into the work that the work and also the advocacy your group Co-Tranet have done on contract transparency?
This is just a typical one that we are very happy has happened. We didn't even know it was going to happen. We had already scheduled that this program will happen, and then suddenly I was in a meeting when I received the response from NNPC. I thought it was a very good opportunity. Stanley had just now told us there's opportunity for us to take that further. We are going to do an official letter to the OGP to bring up this to their notice so that we can follow through that process. That's one way we can collaborate together. Like the EITI process, and the OGP process are almost alike. The OGP process supports the EITI, the EITI supports the OGP process. He mentioned the issue of beneficial ownership. For instance, in the past, we didn't know, the people branded, it was these people that had this contract, they are the ones who owned all of this, And another thing, just yesterday I was researching and found out that the whole talk about contract secrecy in the country, there's a website you can go and we have 9 Nigerian oil and gas contracts in the public that people can hear. So many people hear about OPL 245. In fact, yesterday I was studying the contract of the OPL 245. It's already there in the public. So why are we saying we can't have access to it here in Nigeria where it is already there in the global world? So some of these things that we put a lot of secrecy, we put barriers to accessing it. People are already accessing it, and that makes our work easier. And I keep saying, for all of this implementation to happen, civil society has to play a very critical role. NATI, that the Nigerian arm of the EITI, is on the OGP steering committee. On the extractive side, there's also a civil society group on that steering committee. So we have I don't think we can have a better working relationship than what we already have now. It is only for us to be able to assess it and kind of trigger it. When it is when you have problems like we're just having now with NNPC, we use it to test the process.
Okay.
You want to test the process and see how effective. Really, I've been so excited since yesterday about all of these developments.
Okay, talking about working relationship, does this mean your platform can now leverage on the opportunity created by the OGP to achieve contract transparency?
Definitely. We have a network, ContraNet. So definitely, like I said, we're going to do an official letter to the OGP to say we are doing this. Now what is here that plays out is that this National Action Plan was signed in 2019
Yes.
to run through 2022. Now the EITI standard requirement 2.4 kick-started contract transparency on the 1st of January 2021.
Okay.
2021.
Yes.
So NNPC cannot run away to say, oh, we have to wait till 2021 because the OGP is 2019 and what we're asking for were contracts that were sent in 2020. So and they already made that commitment that they were going to make contracts available from 2019. So there's no way they're not going to run away from it. I'm just let me just
it's really important that that the requirement to disclose is coming from two sides, both the OGP commitment and Nigeria's commitment to EITI.
Yes,
Nigeria is one of the best performing countries in EITI process, and EITI and OGP work as partners. So the issues covered by EITI are also covered by OGP. So there's a technical partnership between the two of them. And the executive secretary of NEITI sits on the steering committee of OGP, and the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources is also a member of that. So I think some of the highest policymakers in this sector will be at that steering committee meeting, and it will be good to hear how that conversation plays out.
All right, and just before we let you go, Stanley Achono, do you have any final words you would like to just put in the mix?
Yeah, so I think that the work that civil society is doing using the OGP process can gain traction if there is public support for it.
Okay.
The requirement for contract disclosure is not just for the sake of information. It tells us about the details of kind of deals that government is entering into with these extractive companies and how beneficial those contracts are and what our expectation should be from those contracts. It's extremely important for our understanding of revenue flows from companies to government and license from government to companies as well.
All right, and how about you, Faith Nwadishi? Any final words?
I want to also say that citizens out there, it is all of us that must demand, because if there's no demand, there's no supply. I keep talking about it. Accountability is a question of demand and supply. If you don't ask questions, you don't get answers. So we need to know, one, the right questions to ask so that we can get the right answers.
Okay then, thank you so much for stopping by on Contract Work this morning. Stanley Achono, Civil Society Advisor, Nigeria Open Government Partnership. Thank you for coming in. And also Faith Nwadishi from Center for Transparency and Advocacy. You are welcome anytime, any day.
Thank you so much, Victor.
All right, go ahead and have a great weekend.